Talking with the experts.
Today the world is flooded with brands jamming every communication channel with the hope of gaining prosperity and fame. In episode 392, Derrick Rozdeba explains.
I think you'd be somewhat fooling yourself because the customer owns the brand. It's what resides in their heads, not in your company. But what you can do is control all of those connection points to make sure that they're getting the experience that you want them to get. So when you go back to the why is your product, why is your brand existing? And if you continue to always make sure everything you're doing is related to that, the customer gets it. But this is the hard part. The hard part is that connectivity between the customer and the brand, and it's a relationship.
Talking with the experts.
Talking with the experts would love to acknowledge Global Glamping Charities Incorporated for generously supporting this podcast. Global Glamping Charities, solving homelessness in all of its forms. Reach out to them at globalglamping.org.
Welcome to Talking with the Experts. This is where we discuss great ideas to take your business to the next level. How do we know these ideas work? Well, it's because we're talking with business owners who are using these ideas. Business owners who have years of experience and expertise. All things business by business owners for business owners. And now, here is your host, Rose Davidson.
Hello and welcome to Talking with the Experts. I'm your host, Rose Davidson from rosedavidson.com. Talking with the Experts is about all things business by business owners for business owners. You can find it on all good podcasting streaming platforms and on YouTube. Unfortunately, today, the world is flooded with brands jamming every communications channel with the hope of gaining prosperity and fame. Oh, yes, miles and miles of it. As a result, connecting to customers is almost impossible. They hear, see, and engage only with the brands they understand. But branding is a process. And my next guest, Derrick Rozdeba, is going to discuss with us how important branding is to your business and personally as well. Derrick is a blogger. He's a branding guru and has guided some of the Fortune 500's oldest and most iconic brands. He has over 3 decades of strategic planning, branding, and executing multi-million-dollar advertising and marketing campaigns, PR and corporate communications in the agricultural, pharmaceutical, petroleum, airline, telecommunication, and automotive industries. He recently published his first book, Branding Queens, Discover Branding Secrets from 20 Incredible Women Who Build Global Brand Dynasties. The book defines branding under 5 key components called the 5 C's of branding. Welcome, Derrick, and thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you very much, Rose, for inviting me. And I feel very privileged to be here to talk about branding. This is a topic that has been, I think, around for a fairly long time, but probably more so as we all try as businesses to try to break the clutter. I mean, there is so much out there and people trying to figure out what they want. A brand is unique. A product can be replicated so easily today by technology. There's products today being emulated in China with the same logo, and you can't even tell the difference. So what's really important is a brand. And I think, I don't know if people understand what a brand is, which is really just a emotional connection between that service or that product that has been built over time. And it's time. So it's a process. As I said, it's a process. I come up with the 5 C's because the brand is simple. It has to be simple because we are busy people. We have a lot going on in our heads. So we have to compartmentalize brands. And so if the brand is simple enough that we get it and we understand it, then we actually retain it. But the branding process, my gosh, it is the most complicated and most difficult thing. And that's why there's so many people involved in this. I mean, I've never seen so many books written about personal branding, which is somewhat, I wonder if whether it's actually personal branding or just a good resume. But in a lot of cases, branding is very complex. And to understand what that means, I tried to actually simplify it as much as possible, down to my 5 C's. And my 5 C's is commitment, which is the why. Why does this brand exist anyways? It's about the promise. It's about the vision. It's about the purpose. This is where you hear a lot about, the brand story. What is the brand story? And this is what resonates as to why I, as a consumer, can identify with the brand, is through the why. So the why becomes a really important component. The next C is construct. Construct is really the brand identity. So you think of the logo, you think of the colors, you think of all the aspects, packaging, the service, all of those things that you can construct and control consistently over time. The third one is community. And community is not just the customer, your target audience, which is really important, but there's the influencers, there's your employees. How do you treat your employees? How do they become advocates of your brand? Just as important. And then the fourth one is your content. And this is actually the area where a lot of people get confused between marketing and branding, because the content is about the branding. Is about the marketing. And it is all of those aspects of, from PR, public relations, to leadership, voice in the community, to your advertising, your sales promotions, all those aspects that we see on every day when we turn on a television, when we look at any social media, all of those feeds that are giving us messages from the brand. And the last one, which I think is probably the one that is the least thought of, which probably is one of the most important one, is consistency. And I called it consistency. It's about how do you replicate the experience over and over and over every time, so that the customer's experience is not only better each time, but will be consistent worldwide. So you look at some of the brands, that is around the world. Your experience when you walk in, you're expecting the same experience anywhere you are in the world. So how do you get that? The other piece to that consistency is always understanding where the customer is going. What are the trends? There are so many brands that have not followed the customer and have died because they became irrelevant. So it's really important in today's world, in particular, where we do have so much data, so much ability to understand what our customers are doing and thinking real time, that we continue to monitor this and we can actually calibrate and move forward with our customers, or even anticipate even before their needs to actually solve those as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of still a confusion in the marketplace about the difference between brand and branding. Now, brand, if you could explain the difference between those two, please.
Sure. So the brand is the emotional connection between the product or service. It's the expectations, it's the memories, it's the stories, it's the relationship that has been built between the product and service and the customer. Branding is the activity you do as a brand to make sure that what you're trying to communicate is consistently over time. But you actually really have to understand what the customer believes as well. So you emulate that. And where does it start? It's like the chicken and the egg.
Mm.
I don't think, if you think that you have actually developed the brand fully, consistently, I think you'd be somewhat fooling yourself, because the customer owns the brand. It's what resides in their heads, not in your company. But what you can do is control all of those connection points to make sure that they're getting the experience that you want them to get. So when you go back to the why is your product, why is your brand existing? And if you continue to always make sure everything you're doing is related to that, the customer gets it. But this is the hard part. The hard part is that connectivity between the customer and the brand, and it's a relationship. So, you can sit down with friends. I'll give you an example. You sit down with friends and you can have a great conversation. You walk away. Jeff Bezos said it, I think, quite nicely. He says a brand is when other customers say about you when you're not in the room, right? So it's what's in their heads. It's what you've interpreted from the brand.
Yeah, I think that people think that the brand is the logo and the colors and the fonts, and the branding is the marketing part of it. And I think there's a bit of a mismatch between what they believe and what is the truth.
Absolutely. So every contact point between the brand and the customer is building that relationship. So you can either let it just flow and just hope for the best, or you can control it. And the good brands, the really successful brands, make sure every one of those contact points are delivering the brand message. So you have your employees, they understand what the brand message, what it stands for, and what their role is in that experience. So that you as a customer are always getting the same messaging from the company, from the brand, and it continues to build that relationship. So it strengthens what you think you thought you were experiencing to continually replicate and experience it and go, that's what it is.
It's like, well, I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be a company or a physical product either. I mean, even podcasting is a brand, and you're branding that as well. So, like, I when I'm having a customer journey or a guest journey, I'm hoping that each guest does. Sorry, I was interrupted then. Someone's come on that they're not due till tomorrow. That each of my guests gets the same warm fuzzies, every time they get, any of the messages from me, so that they know that they're being looked after and that their journey is smooth and as easy to do as possible. So it's not just to do with companies. People, I think, need to look outside of that to services that are provided, or things like podcasts, or interviews, or whatever. So branding go a long way, just not just to do with companies and a product.
No, you're quite right, Rose. Personal branding, coaching, as you said, a podcast. When you're trying to build some sort of business or communications, people like consistency. They want to know what you stand for, and they can rely on that every time they come back. So if you're trying to build, for example, a blog community, you have to set your goals, set what your purpose is and your vision, no different than a corporation, and then have to live to that so that your customers don't get confused. Because the worst thing is that you become schizophrenic and you go, okay, this week we're going to do this, and next week we're going to do that, and your customers are confused. So a brand is about that consistency, and that was my last C, right? It's probably the least exciting C that I have, but it is probably the most important one, because it is the one that people start feeling comfortable, and all of this is based on trust, and trust comes from consistency. I know you're going to be there, and you're going to do the same thing, and I'm confident every time I listen to Rose's podcast. I know what I'm going to get. So you're absolutely right. I mean, I have a slight problem with personal branding, in the sense of you have to have a product or service that you have to define first. Defining a brand by a person, we're too complex. We're not a business, but we can operate an idea, we can operate a concept, we can operate like consulting, we can be a lawyer, we can be a number of different things. And then we have a service, and then we can start building a brand. But I find some of these people say, "Oh, you need a personal brand." I'm going, why? Unless you're not selling something, I think it's just a resume. You need a good resume, you need a good LinkedIn contact page, you need all that. But do you need to actually build a brand? Because building a brand is difficult. It's not easy.
No, it isn't. And I've been with a few companies that have tried to build their brand and have gone about it all backwards, because they think that it's to do with the person who's running the company rather than the company itself.
And probably they haven't spent the time to figure out their why. They've spent, I mean, most companies start by selling a product. Somebody has this great widget that they've come up with, and people like it, and people are willing to buy it. I mean, Apple was no different as a company. I mean, most companies started and they needed the money to invest back into the business. They had no money to advertise. They had no money to actually build a brand. They were selling a product. But as time went on, what happens with a lot of these companies is they continue to sell a product, or they actually develop a brand. And the ones that develop a brand and understand what they stand for, and if anything, if any advice I can give any company, it's to make sure that whatever you stand for as a brand, make it big. Don't make it so small and defined, because times change. And if I look at Apple, started out with a computer. Today, I don't even think you think of them as a computer. Well, their smartphones are computers, I guess, but they have evolved, and their brand doesn't stand for a computer, doesn't stand for an iPad or an iPod. Theirs is about innovation. Theirs is about communicating in a way that we've never communicated before. I mean, so big. So always think of the bigger picture, not so much just selling the widget, because anybody can do that.
Yes, it's got to be something that stands out. It's got to be something that people want to buy, but it's also got to be able to expand and grow.
Yeah. So you mentioned my book, Branding Queens, and it's about 20 entrepreneurial women who built iconic brands. And one of the things that I saw from them, and this goes right back to 1810. So these are not just women today. This goes right back to 1810. Is what was unique about them was they actually had brands that were caring, brands that were, and today you hear so much about, branding, about, social responsibility. Most of these women actually had this figured out well before today. And that is a huge component to branding today. It's not so much of what, what I'm going to buy, but what are you going to do for me? What are you going to do for our world?
Yeah, it's getting back to that now, where people are looking for more social impact, how it's impacting our environment, how it's impacting our society. And they're looking more and more towards businesses that can demonstrate those things to the wider masses, because I think people are becoming more aware that these social changes need to happen, and we just can't continue on the same path that we've always been on, because otherwise the world's just going to be all destroyed, and there'll be nothing left for future generations.
Yeah. So the geopolitical situation that we are in today, and governments, the governments that we're seeing today around the world, even in all of our countries, are they going to take us to a new place, a better place? I don't know. I think people are looking to companies that are global, that have the ability, they have the infrastructure to actually help the world. And I think people are actually understanding that. They're consistent. There is a trust level that exists with brands. And I think there's an expectation that brands can probably help. Now, how? That's another question. But I believe when I see what I'm seeing from again, so a lot of the research I see on a regular basis is this expectation from people that they want companies to have a voice, when we talk about DE&I, when we have a voice about inclusion and diversity, a voice about injustice. They're expecting organizations, large organizations, to have a position.
I agree. I think, even when I was a lot younger than I am now, I expected the companies that I dealt with to have those voices, because I was, into all that stuff when I was even younger. And now that I'm older, and it's becoming increasingly important to leave something for our kids and our grandkids. And, companies need to step up now and use their voices for good, not for financial rhetoric and just I'm here for the dollars. I'm not here for the people.
Yeah. The good thing is with the large organizations that exist today is there are employees that resonate around the world, and they think exactly like you and like me, and we're running these companies.
Without the well, that's right. We could be just little meat and potatoes type of person, but we have a voice still, and we need to use our voices.
Yeah. So just getting back to branding, I mean, it's a topic that I have been involved in for over 30 years, and it keeps getting more complex. It doesn't get easier. I would have thought, okay, I would have known everything by now, but things keep changing. Channels keep changing. People keep changing. So when you think you've figured something out, it's changed again.
That's it. Yeah, it's a bit like the algorithms on social media. You think you've got it all figured out, and the next day you wake up and it's all different.
Yeah.
And that's life,
exactly.
though, isn't it? I mean, we can't expect it to stay the same. And if it stays the same, it becomes boring. And if it's boring, no one will take an interest in it. And if no one takes an interest, it'll just go bust.
Well, and then it's not called work.
That's it. Derrick, where can people find you if they'd like to learn more from you, or even get a copy of your book?
Well, you can go online, Google me, Derrick Rozdeba, and you'll find a number of sources of contact. But I have a website. It's Rozdeba, ROZDEBA.com. There you'll be able to find out. I have a blog. The blog is, okay, that's old school, but it's all about branding. My book will be there as well, but you can also check out books to read. It's the number 2, read.com /branding queens, and you'll be able to find out where you can buy the book, hardcover, softcover, digital, and audio, anywhere in the world.
Wonderful. Yeah, all the links that will be supplied in the show notes later on when I put this up online. So, but yeah, it's good to test your memory. Derrick, we've come to an end today, but I'd love you to share something wonderful with our audience today, some word of wisdom or some little tidbit.
Words of wisdom. So I'll go back to branding. I mean, branding, as I said, it's a process. There is no finish. If you think you've got to where you want to go, as I said, your customer is going to keep changing. You have to listen. You will find the future through listening through your customers. Your customers will tell you where to go. And I think, it sounds somewhat esoteric, maybe, I don't know, but it's true. Customers know where they want to go. What you want to do is always be proactive and actually get there before they get there. And they're not actually going to tell you exactly what they want. What you need to do is decipher what their problem is and then come up with a solution.
Yes. Sometimes easier said than done, but forward thinkers, entrepreneurs are forward thinkers as a rule. So usually they can land in the spot first before the customer does, and that's what we do for keep us happy and going.
Yeah.
Derrick, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me today. I look forward to talking to you again.
I do too, Rose. Thank you very much for having me on your show. It was nice to hear that you actually are from Alberta. So there's a kinship there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Talking with the Experts, hosted by Rose Davidson. Make sure you have a look at our back catalogue over at talkingwiththeexperts.com. And be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss out on any episode. We look forward to your company next time. Talking with the Experts.